I want to point out with Kristy Arnett, when you work with somebody that has that, it's just grace under fire, level-headed, just calmness, and always positive. And so I wanted her to be able to go ahead and share with you what she's up to. And specifically, she's going to be talking about something that's really, really interesting, is poker and risk. So here is Kristy Arnett.
Hi. Hi. I'm just going to get out of the way. I'm geeking out right now. This is really cool. Okay. So picture this. Two people are playing poker, okay? They're facing one another, staring each other down, trying to figure out what cards the other person has. Sweat is dripping from their forehead because this game is intense. And then one person puts their hands behind all of their money and pushes it into the middle, into the pot, and says, all in. Okay, just by a show of hands, just checking in with you, how many of you just pictured two men playing poker? Yeah, most of you. In most cases, you would be right. Like every single movie that's ever had a poker scene, there are two men playing poker. Like Casino Royale, James Bond. Poker is a male-dominated sport, but in the scene that I just set out for you guys, it featured a woman. That woman is me. Because I just described to you the scene from my and my husband's very first date 12 years ago. We went out on an amazing date, and not wanting it to end because we really bonded over our common love for poker, he invited me over to his condo. But to play poker. So we sat in his living room on the couch, and on the coffee table with spare change, we played poker until the sun came up. Today, fast forward to today, we are both professional poker players. We've been featured over the years on ESPN, Fox Sports, and poker magazines. But and just as a side note, by the way, since this is the California Women's Conference, I just want you to know that even though you can't think of a poker scene in the movies with a woman at the table, I aim to change that, right, ladies? I'm gonna rep for us. Yeah, for sure. But I'm not here to talk about being a woman playing poker, or how many times someone said to me, you play pretty good for a girl, because that happens actually quite a lot. Ow, I just poked myself in the eyeball. Anyway, I'm here to tell you a love story and to tell you that poker taught me the single greatest key to success in every single domain of my life, including relationships. Do you want to know what that key is? That key, whoops, I forgot. That's my slide about being in the movies and being a one poker player. It's fine. I was worried about that anyway. It's bad Photoshop. Anyway, risk. Risk is the key. So in addition to being a professional poker player where I assess risk all day long, I'm also a writer and podcaster in the personal development and leadership area, and I also coach people in relationships. And what I have found over and over again is that what's between what we say that we want and what we have right now is fear. And this is particularly true in relationships. Fear is in the way. And the only way that we move past fear is by taking risks. So what I do with people is I work with them to transform their relationship with risk. Now, I have lots of evidence with all the people that I've worked with, and I also have my own personal experience in this love story, which I'm going to tell you. But before I go into that, I want to create a touchstone for you, because what I know is that none of us wake up in the morning and say, what risks can I take today? It's just not really in our nature. I mean, unless you're one of those people who like jump off cliffs and, you know, adrenaline junkies or something. But most of us are risk averse, myself included. Unless there's something worth risking for. So we don't wake up like saying what risks we want to take, but we do go to bed at night thinking about the things that are worth risking for. So I want to ask you, what is it that keeps you up at night? What do you long for? What is worth those risks? Maybe you have had a dream for a few years, but you haven't been able to take the first step because you've been stuck in analysis paralysis, just thinking about what you should do. Or maybe you're an adventurer and you want to travel the world and go to exotic places and experience the local culture. Or maybe it is relationships that you want, and you're looking for that partner who will walk side by side with you for the rest of your life. Or maybe you've been married for a couple years, 20 years, and what you really want is a little extra, you know, in the bedroom. Whatever it is, what keeps you up at night? And I want you to have that in mind and really hold it with you as I go through this story and teach you about poker and risk. Because my intention is that by the end of this talk, you will have already begun to transform your own relationship with risk, and that you will leave here inspired and empowered. Those should be 2 words. That would be really cool. Inspired and empowered to take action today towards what it is that you want. Whoops, let's go back. Okay. So I'll go back to the story. So after that first date, when Andrew, my husband, and I, we played poker all night long, we were inseparable, and we ran around our small town of Indiana looking for poker games wherever we could find it. Since poker was illegal and there were no casinos in Indiana, plus I was underage at the time anyway, we ended up in a lot of dingy basement games, back rooms of bars after closing time. But we loved it. We had so much fun, and we fell in love. And what I really loved about him was his adventurous nature and his love for people. And he really fell in love with my competitive nature and my willingness to take on new challenges. When I finally turned 21, we moved to the bright city lights of Las Vegas, where he pursued his career as a poker player, and I became a poker reporter. A couple years after that, we got married. He proposed and we got married. But shortly after we got married, things really started to unravel behind the scenes. And I think that it's kind of natural when you meet someone really young and you get married really young, and in your 20s, you're kind of discovering who you really are. And unless you do that together, it can be really difficult. And it was the very things that drew us in that drove us apart. It was my competitive and tenacity for new challenges that turned into an addiction to perfectionism, and I became a workaholic who wasn't home very often. And his adventurous nature and his love of people, because he was a poker player where emotions kind of get in the way, and I was gone all the time, those things went unexpressed, and they turned into depression and withdrawal. And at the time, I wasn't equipped, I didn't understand, and I couldn't empathize with what he was going through, and so a wedge grew between us. And 3 years into our marriage, we sat down in the living room, on the couch in front of the coffee table, and the scene looked much like the first day that we met, except instead of sweat dripping down our faces, it was tears running down our faces when he took my hands and he looked at me and he said, "Kristy, I think I want a divorce." And though the scenes from 9 years apart, from our first date until that day, looked the same on the outside, we were still just 2 people looking for love, longing for love. And I assert that that's what we're all here doing here today. We as humans want to love and to be loved. That is I think is our purpose and what we're here for. And I could go on about all of the decisions and the ways that we got to that point. But for the sake of time, I'll just say this, that I had a choice. I had a choice in that moment. And I think the hardest things that we'll ever have to do in life or in poker is decide whether or not to stay and try a little harder or to let go and move on. Or, in the words of Kenny Rogers, which I already kind of showed you, know when to hold them and know when to fold them. Like, that's our toughest decision in poker. And there's a couple of reasons why it's really hard to make this decision in poker. One is that, well, let's say we're playing a hand, you and I. I need to make decisions whether or not to risk my money based on the cards that you have, but your cards are face down, so I don't really know what you have. And I can make inferences based on how much you bet or didn't bet, how you played the hand, or maybe if you don't have a good poker face, I can make some reads on your facial expressions. But in the end, no matter what, I'll be guessing. And so, because I'm making decisions based on imperfect information, as a poker player, I can really embrace that. Sometimes I'll be wrong. Sometimes you'll be bluffing me, and I'll fold, and then you'll show me the bluff with a little smug look on your face like, gotcha. That's the worst. I hate that. And the other reason why it's hard to know when to hold them or know when to fold them is because we can't always control the outcome. So you might be bluffing, and I might make the right call and put all my money in, but with the turn of a very unlucky card, you could have the best hand in the end, and I would still lose. And I think that there is this illusion that in relationships, we need to be certain first. Like, I want to be sure that she's going to say yes to this date before I put my heart out there. Or we think that we can control things, but neither is true. And so in these moments where you need to make a decision whether to stay and hold on or try a little harder or to walk away, this is the first thing that poker taught me about risk, is that we can make a choice and we can embrace the uncertainty. You don't have to know how it's going to happen or what it's going to look like, but you can still make the choice and embrace the unknown. And so that day, I made a choice. I want to fight for my marriage. And he chose the same. But over the next few months, it was not as easy as just deciding. It was pretty tumultuous and up and down. And for the first few months, we just spun our wheels and we didn't really get anywhere. And after one of those difficult times where one of us threatened, oh, this is too much. I can't do this anymore. I called up a friend and I said, and by the way, I hope you all have a friend like this who will tell you the truth. I called up a friend and I said, hey, things aren't going so well. I don't know if I can do this, but I'm telling you, I'm committed and I've tried my hardest. And she said, really? I was like, really? Yeah, really. She's like, I don't get that you're that committed. And I couldn't believe what she was telling me. What? Of course I'm committed. She said, okay, what do you want? I said, I want my marriage to be full of love. I want our parrot. I want it to be passionate and intimate again. And she said, okay, I have a challenge for you. You remember what I said about challenges. I like challenges. So I was like, sure, bring it on. What's your challenge? And she said, okay, for 30 days, I want you to write something that you love and admire and respect about Andrew, and write it in a little note on a Post-it and give it to him every single day for 30 days. I said, okay, I can do that. I wasn't super excited about the challenge because things weren't going well, and but I didn't want to turn down what she said, and so I went for it, and I started. And it wasn't a week in before I wanted to quit. I think it was day 7, Andrew and I had gotten in a fight that night before, and it hadn't been resolved. And you know when you get in a fight and no one wants to be the first to say, I'm sorry, you're kind of just waiting for it. Well, that morning, I went pen to Post-it, and I was like, why? Why do I have to go first? I did not want to do it. I wanted to quit. But then, just as I was thinking that, her voice, my friend's voice, are you really committed, was playing in my mind, and I had to think to myself, well, if I can't write Post-it notes for 30 days for this husband that I say that I love, am I really committed? And so I got real. And what I uncovered was that it wasn't that I didn't love him or didn't want it to work or even mad or resistant. It was that I was afraid. Because remember what I said about what's between what we say we want, what we have in a relationship is fear. Fear was there. I was afraid to put my whole heart into it and all the love and effort and everything and it not be enough. And I was afraid of how much that might hurt. But once I understood that, I was like, no, this won't work. The way I'm doing it won't work. It doesn't work. No great love, no great accomplishment, no great thing can work unless you have an all-in attitude where there's no back door and you're saying, I'm going for it. I don't care. I didn't care what how he responded. I was going to love him anyway. And so that's the second thing that poker taught me was in risking, you've got to have an all-in attitude, right? And so that day I decided, and I gave everything. I was vulnerable. I don't know, I made him lunches. I did all the things. And not only did I do that challenge for 30 days, I did it for the rest of the entire Post-it packet, which I think was like 3 or 4 months. And it was so crazy how much in that time our relationship changed. From my commitment of being all in, writing those notes every day, I grounded myself in how much I loved him, how much I respected him. And every day he got to wake up and say, wow, I feel loved and respected. And so from there it grew. Love grew love. And every day we had more patience, more understanding, more passion, more vulnerability. Every day. And you know, at first I was like, I don't even know if he's gonna like these notes. But then I would see him like take them off the mirror and stash them in like the drawer and keep them and save them for later. And just those small things really transform. And from there, we just continued to grow after those 4 months. And there were times where we just looked at each other and were like, holy crap, I love you more now than I have ever loved you before. And I'm so happy to say that like now we are in a better place than I could have ever imagined. This is us just like 4 days ago in Mexico in our best friend's wedding and his brother's wedding. And there's love and there's passion there. And what's great about relationships and marriage or friendship is that you can reach higher, you can play bigger, you can risk more when you have that support and you have each other's back. And just this morning, he just said to me, I just want you to know that I will love and support you through anything it is that you want. And I know that you need to share this story because it'll make a difference for people. And I got your back. And I love that. And he's here. So thank you. And that brings, and you know, when I think about how grateful I am for what I have today, I think back to those times where I wasn't sure that I wanted to embrace the uncertainty. I wasn't sure I wanted to risk and go all in. And I think about what I would have missed out on had I not risked. And so that brings me to the last lesson that poker taught me, which is that if you actually never risk, you'll lose. There's this thing in poker where we all have to ante up to play. And if you're afraid to put your money in, eventually over time, you will end up losing. And so the very thing that we're all afraid of happening will end up happening by default. And so there's a saying in poker, which is, fortune favors the bold. You've got to risk big to win big. And so I want you to bring to mind that dream, that next goal, that next deeper cut of what it is that you want that you brought to mind at the beginning of this talk. Do you all have it in mind? Can you think of it? And I want you to hold it here and just know there will be times where your heart will be torn. It will be torn between what you really want, and it will be torn with what you're afraid of. And they will be pulling at each other. And you're going to need to be conscious of which voice that you are going to listen to and which voice you're going to live your life by. Because if it's that voice of fear and what you're afraid of and you choose from that place, you're going to lose. But if you choose from what it is that you want and you're willing to risk and embrace the uncertainty, then you will really watch your life transform. And so with that in mind, can you think of one risk that you can take today towards what it is that you want? So I'm going to take a risk here for me. And I'm just going to say, what is that one thing that you can do? Maybe it's a Post-it note challenge for yourself. Or maybe it's booking that trip, or maybe it's asking that cute boy out. So here's my risk. Will you all put your right hand up? Yeah? Okay. And repeat after me. If this is true for you, only if you have that thing that you want and a risk that you want to take. I promise I will risk today. Okay. Awesome. All right, risk every day, and I promise you your life will transform. Thank you.